We're going to be talking all about preliminary data. We will be focusing on deadlines as they have passed now, and what that means for your preliminary reports. We will be discussing all the inner workings of the preliminary report, how you can use it. And Mary has done a great job in December, and she'll do a great job today in January as well, explaining what all of that means to us and how we can best utilize that. So as we are, you can go ahead and advance, Sophia, to the next slide. So just a little bit about us. I'm here to introduce Mary and to be here to manage the chat along with Sophia, Elise, and Phyllis. And I see Dr. Baker has joined us as well. But Mary Johnstun will be doing most of the show for today, and she is from Bach Harrison. So go ahead and advance for us, Sophia. So as a reminder, we want to encourage everyone, if you're not already liking EPIS on Facebook, to go ahead and please do that. That's where you're going to get all the latest information about the first Wednesday webinar. You're going to get lots of information about the pays and how in general, and just, you know, great ways to use the pays, what's happening with the pays, all the latest news related to the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. So we like to keep everyone up to date in as many ways as possible. And that's why we put so much stuff and so much information and resources on the EPIS Facebook page. So please like us there. We do have another poll that, Sophia, if you could launch that one for us too. This is just going to be about your engagement with the preliminary report. So if you could go ahead and participate in this poll. Have you accessed the preliminary report yet? And there's several options on there. Yes, I'm a survey coordinator, superintendent, or administrator. Yes, I'm an authorized data user. No, but I do have access. No, I'm not an authorized to receive this data. So go ahead and participate in that now. I'll give you about 45 seconds to complete that, and then we'll move on.
Looks like we have almost everyone completing it. We got about 82%. So I'm gonna give you 3 more seconds. All right.
Okay, great. So we have a decent amount who have already accessed their preliminary report, looking at like 35%. And then it looks like we have about 66% total who have yet to access, or that's a combination. So looks like 25% have not accessed but have access. And then we have about 41% who have are not authorized to receive that data. So hopefully we can talk a little bit, Mary, about how folks can access that, or how they can gain access to that if they would like to do that. So. And then, okay, so then we'll just go ahead and kick it right over to Mary. What you're seeing now on your screen is just some preliminary information that we wanted to make sure got addressed. This is, like I said before, and like we said in December, this is going to be similar information to the December first Wednesday webinar. This information that you're now seeing on your screen is information that came up, questions that came up. We wanted to make sure we address those first and foremost in this webinar, because they were very important to the folks who were on the December webinar. So without further ado, Mary, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, so these are some frequently asked questions that came up in the last one, and in general, I think these are really good topics to just kind of preface what we're talking about today and kind of the release of these reports. So the preliminary report, or the preliminary highlights report, is intended for those that completed the survey online. So if your district completed it online, you would be eligible to receive one of these reports. If you represent a district or, for example, a charter school or a private school that did the survey in paper, you would not be eligible for this. It's only for online. If likewise, if you're a district or a private or charter school that did the survey in a hybrid fashion, your preliminary highlights report is only going to show the data for those that took the survey online. So full reports, full profile reports, including all surveys, both paper and online. These will be final, completed, totally cleaned, and scaled reports will be released on April 30th. So we're talking about preliminary highlights reports. So when we talk about preliminary, the data really are preliminary. So they might not have included paper surveys. They haven't been fully cleaned according to all of our really rigorous validity and honesty checks. The data may likely will mirror or be identical to the data you get in your final profile reports, but we just need to know that they are preliminary. So in terms of how we are releasing these, we did do a first batch for those who had closed their survey links by November 17th. Those went out in the first week of December. We did a staggered release, so superintendents would get an email that had their link and their password. We staggered that release over 5 days so that we had a group in the morning and a group in the afternoon. That staggered release was intended to hopefully be less frustrating so that you wouldn't all be in the system at the same time and have your data not load. And I think for the most part that went well. I only heard of a couple of people that really experienced a long delay when it came to their data loading in the report. So I think that's a good strategy. In that superintendent email, we gave them a list of authorized data users, including survey coordinators. And we said, hey, these are the additional individuals who have access to your data. We will be sending these individuals and a link to the report as well within 5 business days. So honestly, no superintendent reached back to us and asked us to kind of adjust any of their list. So those began to go out in the same fashion and a rolled out fashion over a 5-day period. After those went out, we did get a couple of emails from districts that said, you know what, hey, we ended our survey before December 17th or November 17th, but we didn't get a link. We were able to look into those to figure out what was going on. Most likely it was something where maybe not all of their links were closed, or, honestly, I think that was actually the biggest reason. And then we were able to get those kind of straggler reports for any that did officially complete before November 17th out. The remainder, and I will say a majority of report links are out through that release process that I just outlined. Now we're working on any that completed the survey after November 17th or had any schools that were open after November 17th. Those reports will be released in the same fashion. So superintendents first through a staggered release, and then survey coordinators and authorized data users second through a staggered release. That process will start next week. And if you have any questions about, hey, which of those pots do I fall into, feel free to reach out to me and we can take a look at that. Countywide and region reports, and by region, primarily we're talking about IU, so education IU regions. Those will be created, or those are being created right now as well. My hope is that we can have those out and probably ready to share with PCCD for posting. Hopefully later next week is the goal for those. And those will come without any password protection. We will make sure that those include more than one school district. So we will not create a county or an IU report when we have only one district represented there. So those are the same rules that we follow for our profile reports as well. If you are a district that participated in our 4th grade pilot survey or study this year, those reports are forthcoming as well. So we're working through revisions for those reports, and we'll be discussing the release of that in this week's PASAG or PAYS advisory group meeting this Friday, not February, this Friday to talk about the release of those. Okay, I think that's it. Next slide. general, we would love to see your ideas in the chat for how you plan to use this preliminary highlights report. If you've already seen it, you might have some good ideas. If you haven't, if you're coming into this without a whole lot of knowledge of what is included in the preliminary highlights report, we would love to just kind of see an ongoing, in the chat, ongoing comments and feedback about how you plan to use the data. I will say that the preliminary highlights report covers 4 primary topic areas. The first is mental health concerns, suicide risk, and help seeking. The second is substance use. The third is school climate and safety. And finally, there are life stressors. So if you're familiar with the survey, you know that those topics are really just kind of a very small sampling of data highlights. The intention of the report is to get some early data, particularly in the hands of data users at the school, the district, and the community level, so you can go ahead and kind of start seeing what you might find in your data. And of course, the profile reports include everything. So yeah, we would just love to see some in the chat about how you plan to share those with your teams. Yeah, Travis Lee, thank you for commenting. They're going to share this information with their Tier 1 PBIS teams, district mental health team, and community supports. That's wonderful. And I love the idea of sending it not just to one group or individual, but really just thinking about which are all of the groups or the individuals who could really use these data right now. And it is definitely not one person or one organization. Within these reports and then within your profile report are just a wealth of information to share with lots of other individuals. Okay, next slide. Important dates, again, as a refresher, those receiving reports kind of in that first batch had closed their survey late. So you had to tell us that we are done with this survey in every school by November 17th. All of those preliminary reports were out in that first week of December. Online, the survey in general was open until the 22nd of December. The surveys are completely closed down now. So if you have anyone who is trying to use those links, they're going to receive a message that the survey is no longer taking responses. And any of those kind of stragglers will be receiving their report links in January next week.
Hey, Mary, I'm gonna, before you get into, sharing all the different sections, I do have a few questions if you want to stop sharing, Sophia. And then I have a couple questions that have popped in. I thought maybe we could answer those before you get into the actual preliminary report and like highlighting what you did last time, like you did last time. But one of the questions is the PDF is downloading well, however, the other options are not. Will that be fixed?
That's not something we can fix. That usually means that honestly, it's that we have like 250,000 survey responses online. So that's a lot for any system. It is going to take a minute to load. That's not anything that honestly I can do. Like I can send a help ticket to Alchemer and they're just going to tell me the same thing, that, wow, this is a really big survey. You're going to need to allow for some loading time. And in the email that went out to superintendents and authorized data users, we did give a little bit of a heads up about that. Like this is, if you're going to experience any type of error or any type of problem, that is loading time is going to be it. So we would encourage you just to open up the window. If it's not loading, to just honestly go about your day, keep that window up and just return back. It will load eventually. We haven't, but for the most part, I think those loading instances are rare. So for example, the demo, the test one, I'll show you, it includes about 500 to 600 survey responses. And it took me, I think, like 2 minutes to load. So I guess that's the answer for that one.
So they did have a clarification to, it is loading, but it can't be read.
Okay, that is interesting. If you want to send me like a screenshot of what you're experiencing, I think that's a new one. So yes, I would do that, and then we can troubleshoot that. I think oftentimes if it's loading, you might see like the text, kind of the text that we have for the survey, but not the actual charts themselves. But if you're seeing something else, go ahead and send me, I'll put my email in the chat, and then you can just email me a screenshot of what you're seeing.
Perfect. So then, and that person is an anonymous attendee, so I can't really tell you who you're looking for, but if they want to provide their name, they can do that in the question and answer as well. So we know what to watch for. But the other question is from Jacqueline Smith, and she has already suggested if she needs to explain further, she can. I think you're going to talk about this whenever you go through the preliminary report, but her question is, there are 2 questions in our data set that I have specific questions about. Their graph for the questions are split into grade levels. The bar for each grade have 2 different colors, light blue and dark blue. In the 2 of the questions, they both say yes instead of yes and no. And will those be updated, or do they reflect the yes, all caps, lowercase yes, all caps no, lowercase no? So did you want to go ahead and explain that, or did you need me to have
That's something where I will kind of go through like how you can detect that.
Perfect.
Usually in the description above the chart, it'll kind of specify like what you're looking at and what the responses are. If again, you want to email me, and my email is in the chat, with the very specific question or chart that you're referring to. If I don't answer it within my presentation, like please reach out again with just kind of specify what you're looking at, and I can speak to that directly. If it is something where there's like an error in the description itself, then once we can make that change to your report.
Perfect. Okay, so I think that's it for now. I think we've addressed all questions. If you want to go ahead and get into the report.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, so this is your preliminary highlights report. I'm showing you a report for who are referring to a sample school district. You will, anytime you're getting a report for district level data, you're going to be getting a link and then a password. Password's usually pretty simple. Case matters. So if it's all lowercase, be sure to use all lowercase and just enter it in exactly how it is without any spaces at the end. In general, you'll come up to this report. A couple of notes as we go ahead and before we kind of dive in terms of navigating it, you will notice over here in the right-hand corner that you do have the option to download this in any of these formats. I think PDF is honestly the format that usually downloads the cleanest. So if you are encountering an issue of the chart's not loading and you're in a rush to get your data, you can't wait. As I mentioned before, just go ahead and export it and you should be able to start diving into the data then. Likewise, another good tip is to use your control key and then hold it down with your plus and then your dash keys. And if you use those, you can see I'm hitting the plus key now. I can make it as big as I want, and I'm hitting the minus or the dash key now while I hold down control and I'm making it smaller. So I'll keep it right there. I hope that's a good viewing size for everyone. And if it's not, go ahead and put it in the chat. But just know that that is a feature. You can go ahead and increase or decrease the size of the report as you see fit. In general, we ask that you go ahead and read all the text. So this is a pretty text sparse report, but these instructions are really important. They help you to understand what you're looking at and then also to give you perspective. And I promise there's not a whole lot. But in general, before jumping into the findings, just know that these data are from the 2023 pays only. Your profile reports will include data, and your all questions by grade report will include data from 2019, 2021, and 2023. So if you want to go ahead and start, for example, comparing your 2023 data to your 2021 report, which you might have in your hands, and you'll have to do that manually, but we're only showing 1 year of data right now. In general, the data here use as many of the validity honesty checks that we are able to build into the online survey, into the programming as it exists. But when we pull this huge data set down, we will do more rigorous validity and honesty checks. So just know that the data here have been cleaned somewhat, but you're going to find final complete data in that April 30th profile report and all questions by grade report. Another caveat is that we are only able to show data that have a minimum of 25 respondents per grade. So in your report, if you're a smaller district or you had a lower participation rate, you might see, for example, you only have data for grades 8 and 10, even though grades 6 and 12 participated. It's because that participation count matters. So if we see that participation falls below that threshold, we're going to go ahead and just suppress or hide those data. They still exist. You will still see that data in your profile report in the form of all grades combined data, but just know that that's likely that is actually the reason why you might be missing that data, or honestly that grade just didn't participate. So we know some districts don't survey every single grade that is offered, and so that might be the reason as well. All of these data report data at the grade level. So anything where we have all grades combined, you're not going to see that. Sometimes these data are of a subgroup of respondents. So for example, of the students who marked X, we're only going to see Y. That usually has to do with skip logic that's built into the survey. So there are some survey questions in which only individuals who saw a question or answered a question before in a certain way, they're only going to receive those. So anytime we're looking at a subgroup of individuals, we're going to mention that in the comments about the question. And it's really important to keep those in mind, because you don't want to, for example, assume that 70% of your students have been abused. Chances are, that's going to be, 70% of that subset of students that indicated marked a certain question prior to that. Let's see. I think that might be it. In general, again, just kind of adjusting the font size as you see fit. If you do see any within many of our charts, you're going to see, again, like was referenced in the Q&A, different colors of data. So for example, a light blue and a dark blue. If you, for example, only see dark blue, that means 0 students marked that light blue option. So if you see there's a color that's missing, it means that 0 students responded to that. And in general, EPIS is always a wonderful resource to help you to understand your data and to make use of it. So please reach out to EPIS if you have any questions. We've included in the report a couple of links to the EPIS system where you can pose a question or make a request. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the content. In terms of participation, this is a great place to start. This is where we are going to lay out specifically which schools are included in the report. If you are a district that did the survey in a hybrid fashion, so some online and some in paper, or you're a district in which not all of your schools participated, this is really important to note, because it's you can't really interpret your data unless you know really who is included, who was at the table. So just taking note of which schools were included, those are the students who are at the table, and those are the students who are represented in your data. We've included some preliminary, again, not totally cleaned, participation counts. These are the counts of students that we understand to have completed the survey in its entirety, or to have at least partially completed a survey. Again, we will be cleaning these for most of these surveys, and we have to have a minimum number of responses to even test honesty. So these are preliminary counts. But again, these will kind of, again, just give you a sense of the number of students that we're looking at. And then we'll just dive into the content itself. So as I mentioned before, there are 4 sections. First is a mental health, suicide risk, and help seeking section, then followed by a substance use section, followed by school climate and safety, and then finally with life stressors. So within mental health concerns, suicide risk, and help seeking, we really tried to pull in a lot of just really meaningful and helpful mental health items that will help you to get a sense not only of just kind of what the state of mental health and suicide consideration or suicide risk looks like in your school district or your community, but also maybe what are some of the contributing factors to those mental health. So when it comes to overall mental health, just kind of let me lay out what we're looking at here. So you're always going to have, first of all, just kind of a title that lets you know what you're looking at. But you might say, well, overall mental health, what do you mean by that? What were students asked? The question itself is always going to be specified in the comments or that kind of description above the chart. So we know here that we're looking at results from the question, my overall mental health in the past month has been good. And then we're looking at, it's going to tell me again who we're looking at. So the chart presents data for two groups. We're looking at students who either marked big no or little no, and those are going to be those in dark blue, and those marking big yes or little yes, and those are going to be the light blue bar. So just again, kind of getting your bearings about what you're looking at is just really important. It helps you to interpret the data correctly. From there, most of the charts within the report are in this format where we have horizontal stacked bar charts. We're going to see for sixth grade, of 100% of students who participated, of sixth grade, for example, 18.1% of students either marked that big no or that little no, so some variation of no. And then 81.9% marked some variation of yes, the big yes or the little yes. You can see what we call the ends or the numbers or your sample size for those as well. So we know that for sixth grade, again, we're looking at 32 students that marked some variation of no. And then we're looking at about 145 students who marked some variation of yes. And you can see as you hover through, you're going to be able to see all of those. It'll automatically kind of highlight every grade, but it's only going to show you when you're hovering for the grade you're hovering over. This is actually one feature where if you're exporting the data, you actually won't get these. You're just going to see the chart exactly like this. So if you do want the ability to go through and look at those end sizes, or to kind of, just have that more interactive, kind of visually interactive and engaging view, you will need to look at the online report. Just skimming through some other questions within this section, we've got feelings of depression in the past year, which comes from the question, in the past 12 months, have you felt depressed or sad most days, even if you felt okay sometime? This is a measurement of depression in general, and this historically has been a question that has existed for a while. A question about think life is not worth it. This is a statement responding to the statement with a big no, little yes, or big yes. Sometimes I think life is not worth it. This is a question that feeds into our depressive symptom scale, which is a risk factor scale that is presented as a scale, and then also as individual questions in your profile report. Likewise, another question that feeds into that depressive symptom scale, at times I think I'm no good at all. Another one that feeds into that scale, all in all, I'm inclined to think I'm a failure. And so those are data that are interesting on their own. They are measurements of depressive symptoms. Again, that depressive symptoms risk factor scale. So you will see those in that format, in that scaled format in the full profile report. We include data for self-harm. So have you done anything to harm yourself, such as cutting, scraping, or burning as a way to relieve feelings or to communicate emotions that might be difficult to express verbally? These, we have more granular data. So we're reporting data for those who marked never, those that marked once or twice, those that marked several times, or those that marked often. Again, if there's any bar that you just simply do not see that color, it is just because 0 students marked that particular response option. Likewise, I think another helpful note is anytime this is only for questions that total 100. So that is the first preface. Only questions that total 100, only questions where we're looking at the full population of students, not the subset. You can add responses together to get like maybe a more palatable like aggregate response. So for example, for sixth graders, you could say, 84% said that they had never done any self-harm behavior. And then you could add up these. So you could say 10.2%, 2.4%, so that's about 12%, and then we add in another about 4, so we're about 16%. 16% marked once or more. So that's just a little tip, but they must add up to 100, and it must also be a question where they have to mark one response. It can't be a mark all that apply. So here is a question where honestly we've got is a different response where students could mark any number of responses. So it's not only important within the PACE survey to gather data that helps us to understand what students are going through right now, but helps us to really paint a bigger, broader picture of what is going on around that issue, and helps us to really understand how students are kind of experiencing life within that kind of state of mind or within that experience. And this is one that we added this year about if you have ever felt sad, lonely, or worried in the past month, who did you talk to about it? So this is a really great question, especially at the local level. If you're doing any type of initiatives that are encouraging different groups of individuals to be more accessible and available to students with mental health challenges, this would be a great one to kind of use to either do some planning or to evaluate your efforts. So this is students for each grade. So here we have a bar for each grade. And if you hover over it, you will see which grade we're referring to. And students could mark any of these. So they could say, no one. They could say a parent, caregiver, other family member, friend, teacher or adult, doctor or therapist, religious or spiritual leader, other adult in the community. This is not an error. So this is one thing within the question. Within the question, we did allow students the option to include this. So this is one where students received this question if they indicated that they were feeling that way. We went ahead and gave students a little bit of a kind of a fail-safe if they were never experiencing that and they kind of accidentally got this question, they could mark that. Another question, this also is a measurement of depressive symptoms during the past 12 months. Did you ever feel so sad or hopeless almost every day for 2 weeks or more in a row that you stopped doing usual activities? Serious considerations of suicide. So in the past 12 months, did you ever seriously consider suicide? This is a question that comes from the National Youth Risk Behavior Survey or the YRBS survey. This is kind of a gold standard as a means of asking this type of question. For this question, students were only given the option to mark yes or no. So again, kind of reading that description is going to help you to understand what you're looking at. Making a suicide plan. So during the past 12 months, did you make a plan on how you might attempt suicide? Again, we have just this as a yes, no question. Attempted suicide in the past year, this is one or more attempts. So here, I forgot, for Pennsylvania, it's just simply a yes, no question. So that concludes the mental health section. You'll find that the substance use section, every other section is really similar in terms of the charts are presented the same way. You're going to find it's similar to interpret them in terms of that we're just going to apply the same rules regardless of what the topic is. So something to note that this section focuses solely on lifetime alcohol use, marijuana use, cigarette use, vaping, and prescription drug misuse. So why lifetime use? You might know in your profile reports, we report data at both the lifetime, which is questions like, how many times in your lifetime have you used alcohol? And they could report any number of uses. And then we ask a follow-up question only of the students who indicated lifetime use. We ask a follow-up for did you use in the past 30 days? So students, given the skip logic within the survey, which is designed to shorten the survey taking time, given that many students, all of the students who say they've never used in their lifetime are never even going to see that follow-up 30-day use question. And within the Alchemer, which is the platform we use for the survey, there's not a really simple and easy way to kind of program the data to kind of adjust for what we call a recode. That recode, so in your profile reports, we will be able to recode the data for those 30-day use questions. So we are looking at, of all students, how many marked 30-day use. But in general, for the online preliminary highlights reports, we're focusing on lifetime use, so any use within their lifetime. Lifetime use is typically more of a measure of experimentation versus regular use. Usually we turn to 30-day use as a measure of regular or habitual use, and lifetime use is generally a measure of experimentation. Many students who experiment with a substance actually have not used that substance within the past 30 days. So again, we're kind of going through the questions. We've got lifetime alcohol use. So have you ever used beer, wine, or hard liquor? Here the data are presented for each of our response options. So again, we have never, we have once or twice, we have once in a while, but not regularly, regularly in the past, and then regularly now. Because this rolls into 100, because students had to mark one response versus this being a mark all that apply, this is another one where you could add these up. So you can say, for example, 88% of sixth graders marked no, and then adding these up, you would get, 12% of sixth graders marked one of these other responses. This is also one where we might have we might have 5 response options, but you might not have students who marked every single one. So you can see for sixth graders, we have the data cover those marking never, once or twice, once in a while, but not regularly, and then regularly in the past, but you've got no sixth graders within this community that marked regularly now. So this is not an error, it just means that no students marked that particular response option. Likewise, we have lifetime marijuana use, which we're interpreting in the same way. Lifetime prescription pain reliever use, which is interpreted in the same way with the same response options. Likewise, for things like this, you will see that we're giving the full question is going to give you additional details on specifically what students were asked. So oftentimes for prescription pain relievers, if you just read the title, you might say, well, what do they mean by that? What are students thinking of when they answer that question? By giving you the full question, exactly how is it provided to students, you can see that we're really trying to kind of hone them in on prescription drugs. We're not mentioning Tylenol here or Advil or Aleve. We're really focusing on those prescription narcotics. Likewise, lifetime cigarette use, same response options, all the same rules apply. Lifetime e-cigarette or vaping use, again, the same rules apply for interpreting it. The same response options were given to students. And yeah, that's it for substance use. School climate and safety, the same thing. We tried to pull out questions. Many of these, actually, I think most of these fuel school domain risk factor questions or protective factor questions in terms of, for example, school opportunities for pro-social involvement or school rewards for pro-social involvement. Things like academic failure as a risk factor or low commitment to school as a risk factor. Those scale scores you're going to see in the profile report. This is where we're just looking at each individual question. So for example, the question, there are lots of chances for students in my school to talk one-on-one with a teacher. This is a question that fuels the school opportunities for pro-social involvement. But you're able to look at this, the data at an individual question level can be really helpful, especially at a school level, to maybe give you ideas for when you're working on, teacher engagement. We've often heard of these questions being really helpful in accreditation processes or any type of accreditation system or any type of just very specific work about school climate. But the same thing, we're looking at 2 groups, those marking big no or little no, so any variation of no, those marking big yes or little yes, so any variation of yes. And you can see here we've got, for example, 21% of students marked big no or little no, so a variation of no. for this question about chances to talk with a teacher one-on-one. And then a majority said that they did have opportunities to talk with teachers one-on-one. So you'll see that honestly, we're keeping a lot of this consistent color coding. But for example, this one is one where we would want the yes to any variation of yes to be as big as possible, right? So when you're looking at the data, just kind of hovering over it, getting a sense of what the question is, if it's a positive or negative frame, and then therefore what that yes or no really means is really important. So here, looking through, and this is an interesting one because a lot of times for substance use and mental health, we can see the data really just kind of gradually change given the age of students. But when it comes to school climate and safety, the data often follow a really different pattern. So this one is interesting to see, okay, of students saying yes, we've got 6th graders and 12th graders that really experience a lot of opportunities for one-on-one time to talk with a teacher. But where we're lacking in this kind of sample school district are 8th and 10th grade. Likewise, I have lots of chances to be a part of class discussions and activities, interpreting in the same way. My school students have a lot of chances to help decide things like class activities and rules. The school lets my parents or caregivers know when I've done something well. This is, for example, a reward. So within the school domain, rewards for pro-social involvement. This would be a question that fuels there. My teacher praises me when I work hard in school. How important do you think things are going to be in school for your later life? This is one where we're using a different scale. So instead of that big no, little yes, big yes, we're looking at these response options. Very important, quite important, fairly important, somewhat important, or not at all important. So these do total 100. So this is one where you could divvy these out in terms of saying, for example, 32, let's see, 32, if I can do some math in my head, 32 plus 30. Roughly 62% of 6th graders mark either very important or quite important. And then you could roll these together. Again, you're only going to be able to add those if they total 100. And then if it was a only mark 1 question, which this is. How often do you feel that schoolwork or inside is meaningful and important? These can often be really helpful. I know that post-pandemic, students in general, we heard from a lot of districts across the nation that a lot of students were just less engaged. They were not as bought into school, and a lot of school districts were trying to rebound from that. So I think this is a great question to kind of help measure that sentiment. In terms of whether students are engaged, they feel a purpose and they feel purposeful going to school. Do you enjoy being in school? Again, kind of along the same lines. The response options for these are never, seldom, sometimes, often, and almost always. And you could add those together because they kind of meet that parameters. Perception of school safety, so I feel safe at my school. This is another one where we're rolling together the big no, little no, so any iteration of no, and those marking big yes, little yes, so any iteration of yes. Here, again, this is another one where I feel safe at school. We would want this to be as high as possible. And for this sample, we do see that with 6th graders feeling the most safe or indicating a higher level of safety, and 10th graders indicating a lower level of safety. When it comes to location of being bullied, this displays displays data for the question: if you have been bullied in any way in the past 12 months, where were you bullied? And this is a mark I'll let apply. This only students who reported being bullied in the past 12 months answer the question. So this is of a subset of students. So this is of the students who indicated that they'd been bullied. In the past 12 months, where had they been bullied? And here you can see that they mark any of these. This is another one where you have to hover over to see which grade you're applying to. This is one where if you were exporting this, you might actually have a question about what the grades were. So just note that 6th grade is always first and 12th grade is always last. This is another one where we have students who marked I was not bullied. Students might be popping up here if, for example, they marked that they had been bullied in anyway in the past 12 months, but maybe honestly they were thinking they answered that question thinking of lifetime, and they marked, this was a chance for them to say, well, within the past 12 months, I had it. Do adults at your school stop bullying when they hear it, see it, hear it, when a student tells them about it? Have you been threatened or hit or beaten up on school property? Again, we're just kind of, it'll give you the response options, what we're looking at. Have you been attacked or hit by someone or beaten up on school property? So again, kind of that bullying and violence on school. And then the last section is life stressors. So again, this, it'll tell you what you're looking at, and it'll also tell you what you're missing. So sometimes the section opening text is going to kind of give a perspective of, what you're not seeing, which I think is a nice carrot to just get excited about looking at your profile report. So this includes data on some specific life stressors, but just a heads up that your profile report will contain additional survey items on things like death of friends or family members, abuse, moving homes, homelessness, food insecurity, lack of sleep, additional stressful events. But covered within this section are death of a family member or friend within the past year. Those yes, no question. Food insecurity, so worrying about running out of food. So how often in the past year have you worried that food at home would run out before your family got money to buy more? Again, we're kind of showing by those response options. How often in the past year have you skipped a meal because your family didn't have enough money to buy food? Again, by those four groups, a lot of these questions kind of fit within that the model, that health model that is being talked about a lot right now about social determinants of health, or the ACE model. And a lot of these data, hopefully as a plug to get you excited about the web tool release, which is always in the summer after the survey reports are out, you will actually be able to look at these questions by any other questions. So you can see the relationship between some of these issues and other issues like mental health and substance use. On an average school night, how many hours of sleep did you get? We're reporting data for two groups of students, those who reported sleeping less than 7 hours a day, and then those reporting sleeping 7 or more hours, or more than 7 hours. Not surprisingly, sixth graders are getting a lot more sleep than our 10th and 12th graders in this community. Types of abuse, those are those indicating that they have been abused in the past 12 years. So this is for the data, if you were hurt or abused by another person in the past 12 months, how were you hurt or abused? So this is a mark all that applies. So we can't add these up because they don't total 100. And it's important to note that these are of students who indicated some type of abuse in the past year. So that's important to note that, for example, 65% of your 12th graders in the school district, it's not that they reported being emotionally abused, but of the 12th graders who did report past year abuse, 64 or 65% of them did indicate it was emotional abuse, insults, or name calling. And that concludes our data. We do, again, end with a really nice plug to reach out to EPIS, which is a free tool, a free service and tool. There's an amazing team there that is just ready to help answer your questions, help you to understand what the data mean or how to interpret them, and then also how to apply them, which is honestly, of all the states that we work with, is often a rarity. Many states just kind of say, here's your data, good luck with that. And Pennsylvania is always really wonderful at saying, here's your data. Now we have EPIS to help you to understand and apply it. That's it for me. Are there any questions, or does anyone have anything where you want to look at this together before I stop showing my screen?
So you might want to keep sharing your screen just to give us some more clarification on one of the topics that you talked about. So the questions where there's 4 options for, the all caps yes, the lowercase yes, the all caps no, and the lowercase no. The question is just to clarify that when the results are given in the preliminary report, it's only going to show up as yes and no, because those 2 yeses are combined and the 2 nos are combined. Is that correct, Mary?
Yeah, and I think that's actually maybe what the question was referring to earlier. Is that, yeah, this isn't any iteration of no, and this is any iteration of yes. And it's always going to specify kind of what those 2 categories are. So it will specify we're looking at 2 groups of students. We're looking at a no group and we're looking at a yes group. So, and when in doubt, just kind of look at that, the description for additional feedback, or just reach out to me if you have a question about what you're looking at.
And then just to ask this question too, it will be broken out into all 4 categories when the full report is.
In your all questions by grade report, and then in the web tool, it will definitely give you all response options. In the profile itself, sometimes we aggregate the data in different ways. So, and sometimes we give every response option, sometimes we don't. So I will say for sure, your all questions by grade report and the crosstab tool within the web tool will allow you to see every single response option.
Okay, so I believe that addressed the questions that I had from the Q&A, but do any of the other panelists have anything else that they would like to add, or any additional questions that they might have for Mary, as she has given us a lot of really great information today?
No, it's always great information. This is Elise. I'm going to put my email in the chat also if anybody wants to reach out with any questions or anything that I can help with at EPIS as we move forward. It's just, you can keep my email address on hand. And if you have any questions, hopefully I can help.
Great. All right, so if no one has any additional questions, I think we should be good. But I thank everyone again for.
Oh, wait, somebody raised his hand. Did somebody
okay.
raise their hand?
Sorry.
Yep, it looks like Matt raised his hand.
Do you want to
I
go
can
ahead
allow you
and
to talk.
invite Matt to talk?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you see me or no? I don't know.
No.
Okay. Quick question as I look through our preliminary report for 1 or 2 of those questions of, have you attempted, suicide? If I see like 1 or 2 kids that actually answered yes, is there any way to get that info so we can help the kid?
Unfortunately, no. So
Okay.
that is one where it's meant to be an anonymous survey. We get the most honest responses from students when we don't have.
Okay.
And this is one reason why oftentimes when we're training our survey coordinators, or we're kind of talking about the survey, just kind of having teachers just be aware that things might pop up and there might be issues. I know something we're talking about for PACE 2025 is to provide a very detailed student resource list or sheet that will be handed out to each student. So if they are struggling with any particular issue, whether it be mental health or substance use, they'll have a resource available to turn to. But yeah, that is one of the downsides is when there is a student that is in trouble, we can't identify who they are.
Just can't 100%. I mean, there's so many other systems out there, whether it's Safe to Say, GAG, all these different things, that if you submit a request to, probable cause, like, is there any legal way, or is it really like there's absolutely no way? I would hate to have info and then not act on it.
Yeah.
And then feel almost responsible that we asked the question, you responded, but there was nothing we could do. Like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, we do know there are a lot of other just kind of school funded or district funded surveys that are kind of tied to individual student IDs that can help to gather that information. This really is intended to gather the most honest responses to give a good sense of what the need is. That said, when it comes to an online survey, I mean, it is always possible, if given the raw data, that you can identify a school, and then if you put together enough demographics characteristics, you could identify someone. I don't know if honestly, and Rose could probably speak to that, if our IRB would allow that type of data share. And that's the review board that kind of makes sure that we're protecting the anonymity of participants and parents within that. But I don't know, Rose, do you have any other thoughts on that?
Okay, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
Matt, I This is Phyllis Law. I think this is where it's also a really great opportunity to really work on sending the messages about reach out, speak out, that kind of thing, and really developing, building on, and supporting the fact, all the things Mary said about the anonymity and the importance of this survey, but really building on that and saying, we're here to help, we have a safe space, we want to help you, and really using those environmental approaches to get your kids to really not only speak for themselves, but if they have friends who they know are having challenges, to be able to, have places to go to feel safe to talk about these very, very important and challenging subjects. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Yep. Okay. And then April 30th, we'll get some sort of like email with the link to the results when they come out, right, Mary? Okay, thanks.
Oh, Mary, you're
You're
muted.
muted, Mary.
Thank you. Sorry. It will be the same release process, honestly, but like within 1 day. So superintendents will get a PDF of the report. They'll get a PDF of their all questions by grade report. And then like 5 days after, we'll be sending that to other authorized data users.
And then there will also be the first Wednesday webinar too will be a good place to be there to utilize the data. We'll go through the PACE guide, how do you look at the data? How do you look at the crosstab tool, the all grades, all questions by all grades, all of those things. We're looking to make sure that anybody who wants them has the resources to be able to utilize the data in the best possible way.
So then I did want to also mention too that, and Melanie, thanks for sharing that in the chat as well, but don't be afraid to ensure that your SAP teams and everyone associated with SAP is aware that the survey is happening, and to be on the lookout for those things, because yes, there are people who are proctoring the survey, but the people who might need to intervene or to be available or to know what's going on is the SAP team in your buildings as well. So I think that's a great suggestion and one I was thinking about too, Melanie. So thanks for sharing that. We just had one other thing or other comment, and I think we can just address this for sure right now, but the suggestion is to have the ability to customize the resources for local resources when that's created for the students. And I think we've talked about teacher resources as well. We sort of floated that around. So I'm going to say, I think that we could probably make something customizable. Mary, I don't know if you hard no on that, but I think it's definitely possible.
We've got a lot of options, which will run through the state, whether it be like print or whether Bach Harrison printed and provided or the district printed and provided. And a lot of those things kind of hinge on whether we can do that, but we'll be exploring that as an option. And then if for some reason we can't, we'll be providing survey coordinators with some instructions on how they can add their own to it. So yeah, we'll be looking at all of the parameters and kind of issues with that for 2025 for sure.
Perfect. Okay, I think that's it. And we are almost right at time. And I know Sophia has a link for everyone to participate in an evaluation. So Sophia, if you don't mind putting that in the chat, and Elise or Sophia, if I have anything else, if I missed anything, jump in.
Nope, I think we're good.
For being here. So thank you.
Good on this end. Thank you, everyone.